And now to updates on the war in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian intelligence agencies have received information showing Russia is considering carrying out what he calls a terrorist attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. During his regular nightly videos, the Ukrainian president said he was sharing the intelligence with all Ukraine's international partners. He, however, did not say what evidence the intelligence agencies based their assertion on. The nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia is Europe's biggest. It has been under occupation since shortly after Moscow's forces invaded in February last year. And the Russian authorities, on the other hand, have denounced President Zelensky's comments about a plan to attack the Zaporizhzhia power plant as another lie. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said in an interview with reporters, "It's probably just another lie. It's another lie. You know that there has just been contact with the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, on the spot. The assessment by the IAEA is high. They have seen everything they wanted to see. There are plans for contacts between Rafael Grossi, that's the IAEA Director General, and Alexei Lekachev, head of Russia's Rosatom, in the near future. Our dialogue and cooperation with the IAEA continues. We're interested in continuing these contacts, and the IAEA is interested. Everything else is a lie." Well, speaking about the war in Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin says Moscow has seen a lull in Ukraine's counteroffensive and that Kyiv had suffered heavy losses in attacks in the south. His comments came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his army was slower than desired, but that Kyiv would not be pressured into rushing it. President Putin has been speaking with increasing frequency about the battlefield situation, perhaps reflecting the fact that the 16-month-old conflict has reached a critical moment with the launch of Ukraine's long-expected push. But he said that Ukraine's offensive potential has not yet been exhausted. There are also reserves that the enemy is thinking about where and how to introduce. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal says he is certain Ukraine will have received the $6.5 billion it needs this year for its rapid reconstruction from pledges made at a donors' conference in London. Mr. Shmyhal said his government is yet to assess all the pledges to come to a final total, but that in the nearest time after the conference, this will happen. At the conference in Britain, the United States, the European Union and others pledged billions of dollars in additional help, as Ukraine said it needed yet more capital and also commitments to specific projects to not only recover but to develop into a powerful member of the Western world.
During our multi-agency donor coordination platform yesterday, we discussed this additional need for 6.5. We understand how to cooperate with G7 countries and with international financial organizations, and I'm sure that nearest time after this conference, according to the results of this conference, we will collect all needed money and will invest this for rapid recovery needs in Ukraine.
In the meantime, Ukrainian missiles have struck a bridge connecting Crimea with Russian-held parts of the southern Kherson region overnight, forcing traffic to be diverted to a different route. The so-called gate to Crimea, known by Russians with a different spelling as the Kongar Bridge, is one of a handful of links between Crimea, which Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014, and mainland Ukraine. It's on a route used by the Russian military to move between Crimea and other parts of Ukraine under its control. Russian investigators said 4 missiles had been fired by Ukrainian forces at the bridge. A news agency reported and quoted a spokesperson for military investigators as saying that markings found on the remains of one of the missiles suggested it had been made in France. In other news, a Russian court has rejected U.S. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershovich's appeal against his pre-trial detention on charges of espionage, which he denies. The 31-year-old was arrested in March this year and has been accused by Russian security officials of collecting military secrets in the Urals city of Yekaterinburg. They have provided no evidence to support the assertion, which is vehemently denied by the Wall Street Journal. Evan's parents, Mikhail Gershovich and Ella Milman, who left the Soviet Union for the United States in 1979, were in court today to support their son. If convicted, Evan could be spending as much as 20 years in prison. He's been held at a time when relations between Washington and Moscow are at the lowest point since the Cold War, after Russia launched its special military operations in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the U.S. ambassador to Russia, Lynn Tracy, who was not allowed inside the hearing, told reporters outside that she was extremely disappointed by the court's decision. She praised Evan Gershovich for his remarkable strength and resilience and reiterated the U.S. stance that the charges against him were baseless.
This was a procedural hearing appealing the conditions of his continued detention, and we were extremely disappointed by the denial of his appeal. Although I could not speak with Evan directly at the courthouse today, we were able to see him in the courtroom. Failing to comply with its obligations under the Consular Convention enforced between our two countries, Russia has denied the U.S. Embassy's requests for formal consular access on 3 occasions since I last visited Evan in April. Nonetheless, today in the courtroom, Evan continued to show remarkable strength and resiliency in these very difficult circumstances. The charges against him are baseless. He is an innocent journalist who was carrying out journalistic activities and has been wrongfully detained. Such hostage diplomacy is unacceptable, and we call on the Russian Federation to release him, as well as Paul Whelan, another U.S. citizen who has been wrongfully detained. And we call for that release to occur immediately.
Joining me now is our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird. Maria, good to see you.
You as well.
Well, I suppose news about Gershovich is in wide circulation now, which already in the U.S., which already has a history with Americans being held arbitrarily by Russian authorities. How is this news being received?
This news is obviously disappointing to most Americans, but obviously it's not right now to expect it. Feels great, I think, a bit optimistic. I think the first thing to be done to ensure that his potentially upon him, but as many people have stated, it's been heartwarming the experience, but somewhat entity over the last day. So obviously, parents are also thinking that was obviously probably a moment of rejuvenation for him.
Okay, Maria, I'm having some problems hearing you, but if you can hear me, has there been any government focus on the fate that awaits him? He could be facing 20 years in prison if convicted.
Yes, and that is, I think, where many are concerned, is that they're concerned whether or not, if he is brought forth to conviction, and if that does end up being the case is that what would be the fate of him moving forward? 20 years is a very long time. We know that we still have Paul Whelan, who is a detainee in Russia. And so there's going to obviously be, and there's been conversations for quite some time now between the U.S. and Russia about the and I know that the State Department is going to continue to work hard on this issue to try to secure their release. The question is, what does the U.S. have right now to be able to potentially negotiate with Russia? And that is going to be key and important as we move forward in the days and weeks ahead. And I know the parents are going to definitely be encouraging and working with the U.S. to try to see what they can do. But we will very unlikely hear much about what the U.S. is going to do for negotiations because that is typically information that they try to keep discreet until such time that we are able to secure a release for the detainees.
I guess this also brings into focus the other Americans being held in Russian prisons, as mentioned by the U.S. ambassador to Russia, Lynn Tracy, and also brings to mind when the female basketballer Brittany Griner was released from Russia. Families of other detainees called on the president to do more to help bring their loved ones home. What has the U.S. government done in attending to their requests?
The U.S. government this time
All right, I'm afraid we have to let Maria go there. Her audio is a little poorly.